Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. It's your brother Preacher Moss, host of the SOS show. Glad you can make it. Listen, I'm glad to be back. Second week straight after coming back from the UK. Thanks for all the prayers and duas. As many of you know, I had some health issues over on tour in the UK. Feeling much better now. And I'd like to say, with conviction and confidence, that I'm on the mend back. Right at the top of the show, I want to give a shout out to Sister Satana. She won't be able to join us today. You know that is an extremely hard-working sister, and today is just one of those days. I gave her the day off. I insisted that she take the day off. We insisted that she take the day off, so that when she is here on the shout out show, she's focused and she's focused and she is I want to say dedicated to what we have to do. She works tremendously hard, and this is not the only thing she does. Like I said, she's multifaceted, multi-talented. So, Sister Satana, wherever you are, assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My dear sister, get you some sleep, kick your feet up, get yourself some Uber Eats. Make sure that the rest of this day is your day. Before we get into our topic of the day, I want to make sure everybody knows that this is not something morbid. The topic of the day is visiting the graves, and I'm going to tell you where this topic came from. It literally came from a visit that I did to a cemetery to see my grandmother and my grandfather and assorted relatives who were there. And while I was there, and I'll tell the story a little bit longer, it was something about the wisdom and the subtleness, if you will. Not the finality, but the subtleness of visiting the graves. Now, in Islamic tradition, we are definitely encouraged to visit the graves. And it was interesting because it's not a morbid thought. If you really think about it, this is a connectivity to legacy before you. I thought it was a very powerful sentiment when I first heard about visiting the graves, and I've tried to make it something that's a little bit more of a tradition, if you will, a little bit more of a feasible exercise of my spirituality and things of that sort. But I have to say that visiting the graves actually did something I had anticipated, which was it gave me another pathway to understanding all the stuff that's around us. We are, for lack of a better word, surrounded by conversation about death, promotion of death, murder, killing. And I'm like, in the most divine plan, in the best life you can live, in the end, if you're lucky, someone's going to visit the graves. And you're going to visit the grave. So my point in today's show was talking about that. Not in long, I want to say long breaths, if you will, but really being able to break it down because there was some wisdom there. And I think sometimes we overlook what that wisdom is. Like we're in such a hurry. When I went to the gravesite, you know what? The people in the ground, they're not in a hurry anymore. They're not battling the elements of life. They're not engaged in the tomfoolery, the lies, the deceit, that there's a finality there that gives you a final resting place. Listen to what I'm saying, a final resting place. And it can only be by divine decree, divine design, that this thing is actually here. That the mechanism for, I want to say, death, but a cycle. Understand that it's part of a cycle. And sometimes we get into a space, we don't think about it until it visits us hard fact. We're not thinking about it until some event puts itself on us and imposes its will on us where we have to look at these are the realities. It could be with your parents, your children. It could be you're driving in the car and the car went one way, you're in an accident. You have all these eventualities. But the end result is we a lot of times overlook it. We say we were lucky. That in many regards, life wins and death is cheated. Death is never cheated. It allows for life, but it's never cheated. Guys used to always say, death is undefeated. It's true. It's true. Now, to even grow on that concept, and we're gonna take a break and start the show. I want us to start thinking about the wisdom of those who we visit in the graves. Okay, we'll be right back here on the Shout Out Show. Don't you move. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Preacher Moss, comedian extraordinary. Listen, I have news for you. Save the date, January 12th to 13th. In Southern Florida, brothers and sisters, in Fort Lauderdale, we're going to be a part of the Soul Flow Conference, Muslim Conference in Bazaar. Make sure you get your tickets. I'm going to tell you why we got it. Emancipate Web, State Out London, we have brother ShOUT. Listen, you got me possibly doing some comedy. I don't know, maybe I'll lecture us just to switch things up. Okay, don't get worried. Listen, think about this right here. They call it the Soul Flow Conference, but really, it's Soul Flow, SOUL, Flow Conference. That's coming January 12th and 13th. Get your tickets, brothers and sisters. Don't wait till it's too late, brother. You don't want to miss out on getting your Soul Flow. Okay, don't miss out on your Soul Flow. That's going to be happening in January the 12th and January the 14th. So, January 12th, January the 13th, 2024. So, shout out to Soul Flow, South Florida Muslims. So, before we get in the shout out show, I want to make sure that I take care of my shout out show family that have been so dedicated for so many years. We have personal relationships. We do Ramadan together. We've been through so much. Some things you don't even know you've been through, but you went through, and you were supportive with your brother Preacher Moss. So let me make sure I shout out. We got echoing. Okay, I don't know why we have echoing. Well, hopefully I'll fix it. Hopefully I'll fix it. Let me know. So I want to give a shout out to Sister Ree and her husband Derek, son Jawan. Hope you guys are doing well there in that great state of Texas. Hope so that you're blessed. We appreciate you tuning in. If this is still echoing, let me know. Hopefully not. Okay. I want to give a shout out to brother Altaf Rashid. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our main man from Toronto, better known as the Canadian envoy to the show, Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down. Thank you for tuning in, brother. I mean, if I could give a gold watch, a gold Rolex to everybody on the shout out show, believe me, I would, because that's how much I appreciate you. Thank you for coming up and joining us from across the border. My main man, Eric Carter. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Beloved, how you doing down in South Carolina, kicking it? I hope to be down in South Carolina actually next year, man. So let me know what part of South Carolina you're in, man, so I can make sure I give a shout out to do so. All right. And we got brother Bilal Salahuddin. His queen is not with him today. He says just him today. So please give a hug and a salam to Sister Sonia. We know we appreciate her, and she is here in spirit. Okay. So let me get to this thing. So as parts of this I want you to look at. I have a video of Stevie Wonder. Now, you guys know that Stevie Wonder is a dope musician. He's a generational talent. When he leaves, there'll be no one like Stevie Wonder. He released this thing. I don't know when he released it. I saw it and I was like, there's a genius to this thing. And there's an interview. I couldn't find it where he talked about visiting ancestors. So let me show you this video. Don't you guys move. And let me know what you think.
It's been hard to stay silent with all that's going on. In my mind, I get it. I hear what's being said from all corners of our earth. I get it when you're controlled by what you're thinking. In our heads, we hear, if you fight me, I'll fight you harder. If you curse me, I'll curse you and yours even stronger. That is how my mind thinks. Speaking without listening to the spirit. It is the mind that is not connected to the soul. The spirit knows that fighting harder, cursing stronger, hating longer will never end. It just gets easier to use a knife, a gun, a drone, or a bomb. All in the name of blood spilled on the ground to leave more lives buried in the ground, never reaching higher ground. To any of the leaders that feel that this is the only way, I ask you to be brave enough to say in your way is a way to World War III. Am I the only one that sees this? I stand up with peace. I stand up with love. That's who I am. That is what God made me of. I stand down on war, and I stand down on hate. We cannot let revenge be our unimaginable fate.
So, I mean, I'm watching this thing with Stevie Wonder, okay? And I'm going in a very, very sad tone. I'm like, you know what? We miss that kind of focus. We miss that kind of generational understanding of what it is that makes us great, what it is that makes us failures, what it is that makes us fail one another. And so it was actually yesterday when this happened. Man, I'm just sharing with you guys. Yesterday, while I was running some errands, it came across me. I said, I haven't been to visit my family members that had passed away at Harmony Cemetery, right? Harmony Cemetery is off Sheriff Road in PG County. The cemetery is literally maybe 15-minute drive, 12-minute drive from my house. I'm telling you this because essentially I had no reason why I have not visited them in the amount of time I have visited them. It's not like I got to take a plane to go get there. Like when I go to go visit my dad, you know, and pay respects at his grave, I got to get a plane and a rental car. I got a plan. When I'm in D.C., there's no reason for me to not go. And here's the thing I'm going to share with you. I don't know if this ever happened to you. But there I drove confidently into the cemetery, Harmony Cemetery. My aunt and my two aunts are in a mausoleum thing. You can see their name. Bam, bam, no problem. Got in the car and I said, let me go see grandma, grandpa, my two uncles, and my aunt. Bam. I went there, brothers and sisters, and the worst situation that could happen is I got there and I could not find them. Now, granted, there was a lot of building that's gone on, and Harmony is just putting up graves everywhere. Let's just throw that out there. But it still is the point whereby I got to apply. I thought where this is where my family was located. And I literally went from one part of the cemetery to the other. I'm stepping over people they've been laid to peace. I'm trying to find. And what happened along with this anxiety that I couldn't find them was the fact that I felt ashamed. I felt a sense of shame. I should always know where they are. They're not going anyplace. They're in their final resting places. And what happened is I felt this overwhelming sense of shame that I couldn't find them in the gravesite. And what it spoke to was, in my quote-unquote very, very busy life, I had forgotten to visit the graves of people who now, they're responsible for me being here. My grandparents are responsible for me being here. My uncles and my aunts are responsible for grooming me into the man I am today. And in this space in broad daylight, at this gravesite, where they've been, in some cases, since 1983, I couldn't find them. And the panic grew along with the embarrassment and the shame. I could have gone to the thing and asked them where so-and-so was, but I felt it incumbent that I had come that far. I must find them. Now, here's the deal. You know, I don't want to say it's a happy ending, but I did find them. I did find my grandfather, my grandmother, and my uncle all in a row. I found my aunt and my uncle all in a row. Down a little bit from the hill, my Uncle Frank. I found him. And I started to believe something that I've been feeling for a long time. That there's a spiritual nuance from those who have passed who continue to try to show us the importance of the lives that they lived. That we have a juxtaposition of how our mothers lived, how our fathers lived, how our grandparents lived, compared to how we live. Now, I'm going to say this in terms of African American family. I'm going to say this because it's important to understand these facts. That my grandmother and my grandfather lived in a time where there's no internet, no social media. They lived in a time in the context of deprived rights. Jim Crow, segregation, all of that. My grandfather was born in 1910. He had seen it all by the time he passed away. And my grandmother, of course, lived into her 90s. But my point was, they lived elevated existences because the struggle was so much more, so much more grounded in profundity, that they had to make a way for everybody that came after them. You know, we sit around, we watch TV, we watch Palestine and da da da. I don't think if people understand that there are generations of people that have been ended and generations of people that we will never see. I don't want to get on Palestine. I've done the last 2 shows on Palestine. But I wanted people to understand that here in the United States, in everyday living, we seem to be going over. We seem to be missing it. We seem to be glossing over this thing. Only illness brings us to this space. Illness, a threat of life, brings us to this space where we recognize that we need to understand the value of life, our lives, and how it connects to people. So the thing that seems to be even bigger, or the thing that seems to be even larger in this space is, how do you get there? You know, I did something I mean to do a long time ago. I went on Ancestry.com. And what I did with Ancestry.com was I managed to kind of go through different stuff. And what I want to say is, I've got to learn about relatives, like my mother's side. I got to learn about relatives, and it was powerful. And the reason why I find it was powerful is this: I didn't really know them like that. My knowledge is basically my mom, my aunt, my uncles. And I have very limited exposure to her father, and her mother had passed away by the time I was born. But I think it was really important for us to understand. So look, we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about that. Don't you move. This is Preacher Moss on the Shout Out Show. We're talking about visiting the graves. We'll be right back.
Yeah, so my first, I guess, introduction to convenient urgent care, they were providing masks and supplies for people who didn't have supplies during COVID, and I went to pick them up and was going to take them around to some of the local areas, and I ran into a brother named Ijaz Saeed. And as I began to talk to Ijaz, it was very, very clear that this brother had a vision for community service. Oftentimes, when you have urgent cares in a situation that they're not necessarily doing a prevention or education. He came up with the term "a home of the smart patient," and I understand what that means. It means that people really want to be in tune about their health, but at the same time, they also want to be in tune about the people who are providing health. This is a very organic relationship. And little did I know, a year or so later, I would actually have to call on their services when I was in dealing with some physical trauma, if you will. And I have to say, they held my hand and they took me through the process. The offerings of telehealth, the offerings of being able to walk in consistent. I was in pretty bad shape, but they treated me like I was the president of the United States, not that one, Obama. Okay, I'm joking. But what I want to say is the professionalism, the dedication, the care, compassion, and the consistency, all the things I just named, makes convenient urgent care the space you want to go to. 3 locations in the Houston area: Cypress, Pasadena, and Parker Road in Houston. But I want to say the overall conceptual understanding of convenient urgent care is that they care for their patients, even when the patients don't know how to care for themselves. Check them out.
To the show. All right. Sorry about that. A little background noise. Don't worry about it. So we're talking about this whole idea of visiting the graves, and there's a couple of things that came to mind when I went to visit Harmony. Number one was understanding the extraordinary lives of the people who were there, and I don't mean just my family members, of course, that's important, but going to the mausoleums and seeing pictures of people, if you will, seeing pictures of people on mausoleums, seeing the different grave sites and what it means, because when a person is buried, you bury a person, there is a sentiment in the context of, we want them to go out right, we want them to be comfortable, we want this grave site to represent the pride in the person, if you will. And I don't want to make any kind of blanket decision because, the whole idea of grave sites has actually evolved too. But, it took me back, and I can remember, with the exception of my uncle, I can remember every funeral that we had. I can actually attach to every emotion that we had when my grandfather passed. I knew how that was, and I understood how my father was affected. When my aunt passed, I just got back from the UK. My friend actually was here yesterday from the UK, and he was the first one to bring me to London on a tour. And what was interesting was we were talking about when he came, and I was like, "Dude, I came November. I came December, in December, 2004." And he said, "How do you know?" I said, "My aunt passed the day after I got back. Actually, the day I got back." And you have these kind of stories. I don't know about you out there in the listening audience. I don't know. Um, I think the thing to revisit the graves is really in a very metaphysical way is that you revisit the love that you have for these people. Not the death per se. Death is imminent. We all know we're going to go. But there's something about going to visit that person you can't see or hold anymore. That is, I would say, very, very powerful. That the emotion, if you will, is something that's unique because it's not sadness. It's not sadness. Like many of you, when you lose a family member, like when I lost my pops, it's like every day we pray for the soul of my pops. Every day we pray for the soul of family members who have passed. We make those duas that they get the best of paradise on the other side. We don't know, but we make that goodwill towards them. And the question is, why do we do that? Why do we make that goodwill towards them? I think we do that because one, we do want them to have the highest levels of paradise, but we secretly wish, in many regards, that we go, somebody does that for us. Somebody wishes upon us that we, here we go, that we have the highest levels of paradise. And it is a duty. It's a duty. And I understand it clearly now, a lot more clearly now. I don't say clearly now, but a lot more clearly now, understanding, you know, service does not end with death. Like service does not end with death. When you're trying to do goodwill, I have a lot of sayings for my grandfather, a lot of sayings for my father. This is logic that's not lost. It's not just thrown out in the universe. We watch our parents, we watch our grandparents, we watch our aunts and our uncles, and we pick from the best of them. We pick the best of them, the best attributes, the best sayings. We pick that because we feel that's the thing that makes us better. And in this particular visit to the graves, I just had a profound level of appreciation. There's a profound level of frustration and embarrassment at the beginning. But as I began to go through it, I was really, really driven. Like, I've got to find these people. And for no other reason than to pray over their graves and to say thank you and to let them know that we're still praying for them. In many regards, some of us let them know that we're doing okay. But it's such an important process. An important process. We have natural disasters that happen, earthquakes and mudslides and things of that, dams breaking, and where people don't have the comfort. They don't experience the rights of the graves. They have mass graves where relatives won't be able to find them. They're in a locale. They don't have a name, a gravestone that says so and so is here. It doesn't designate it. And that bothered me because we sometimes here in the world, but sometimes we we take it for granted. We take it for granted that we're gonna have a peaceful homegoing. We take it for granted that when we leave this earth, that we're gonna be taken care of. When the lights go out, we don't know why the lights go out. We're gone. We're out of this world. Angels are coming to collect our souls. Yada yada yada, all that good stuff. But on the other side, you have to understand, man, how people are living When I say how people are living, I'm like, when you look around the world, there are people who are in desperate times. When I say desperate times, it could be famine, politics, war, but there are people in desperate times. There are children in desperate times. I just don't mean overseas. I'm talking about walking down the street, looking at young men, young women who at some point in time have stopped investing in the quality of life. And we can't tell them what this thing is. We've lost, I want to say, lost the language a little bit, or we lost the communication skill to be able to relate to them how important life is, but also how paramount death is. I talk about this not a lot because some people say, "Oh, this is morbid to talk about," and it's not. You know, in my religious life, in my religious life as a Muslim and a Christian, it was always relayed to me, and my grandfather and father would say the same thing. Hey, look here, boy, ain't nobody gonna get out of here alive. Not a, it's a rough summation of life, but it speaks to, and this is the thing about visiting the graves. It speaks to the fact that these are lives that are lived. We go and talk and visit and engage lives that have been lived. We can relive what grandma used to say to us, or how granddaddy used to fix things, or how auntie used to cook, or all these things. Our uncle used to tell stories on the corner, and each of them has a parallel, if you're lucky, that you connect to not only your family but the families around you. That there's a richness, if you will. I thought about when I was at the gravesite, I thought about all the people that had left. So it wasn't just my grandparents and my three uncles and my three aunts and my cousin who passed. You're talking about generational experiences that have made us better. Generational experiences that in life we can still celebrate because we have the process and the miracle of mercy and memory. We can think back to times. This is the miracle of what I'm talking about. You can think back to times when you were children with your cousin, or your aunt or your uncle held you, or let you climb on their back, like I used to do with my Uncle Frank, and smack him on the top of the head. He had a bald spot on top of the head, but I'd smack him on the top of the head, and he didn't do anything. He just laughed and let me do it. You know, I haven't been down to Virginia in a while. You know, many of you guys know last November, I lost my aunt, and we weren't able to attend the funeral because it was too much. You know, with my mom and my aunt, that they're advancing in years, so turning around and trying, it was just too much. It was a lot to get them down there so they could pay their last respects. You know, but through technology, even with my cousins passing, we watched it on live stream. That's the thing now, you watch it on live stream. But it's not like being there. It's not like being there. It's not like going to a funeral. In many regards, being accountable. So I believe this whole idea sometimes of visiting the graves is that it's accountability. There is something to be said that you look after me in this life, but I look after you in the next life. And what that means is, you know, we report. There's still accountability. You know, many of us, when we lose our parents want to make sure that we are going to carry on a way that they find satisfactory and be able to protect our families, to be able to promote good ideas, good habits, good ethics to our family. And you always hear about stories of people that hold on so they can see their children. And I believe that these stories are not fabricated, that people do hold on. They find the strength and fight death in many regards. They delay death in many regards to make sure when they leave this earth that it's okay, that it's all right. And sometimes having these conversations, when we find that a loved one is terminal or a situation cannot be fixed, that we have these open conversations. And I used to think of them as creepy when I was young, but I'm like, this is some next level intellectual engagement. This is sort of like some of the higher forms of emotional intelligence, to talk to somebody, understanding that they're not going to be there, and they respond by giving you information that they frame, if you will, a vibe or a feeling that gives you comfort. That they're braver than you dying than you living, because they're not worried about things. There's no uncertainty. The finality of death is that questions have been answered, books have been closed, and life is meant to be lived. It's like the closing of a door. You can't come through this door anymore. This door is closed, it's locked, it's bolted. The house is taken away, the door is taken away. And you realize that indeed, it was a blessing to be in the situation. I heard an imam one time talk about visiting the graves, and he made some subtle points. One of the points he made was, you know what, you have a fiduciary responsibility to check on those who have left us in spirit, not in body, have left us in spirit. He said, and the thing we shouldn't understand is that we need to pray, because we don't know what their status is in the afterlife. We don't know what their status is if they get into paradise, if they don't. We need to constantly remind Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that mommy was a good person, daddy was a good person, granddaddy was a kind person, grandma was a merciful person. We need to be able to say those things, and we say them in our prayers because we don't know. And then, in a reflective sense, we need to do it for ourselves. We need to do it for ourselves. We don't know if we're going to get a passing grade into the afterlife. We don't know. Therefore, spending time and going to the graves is a remembrance of the fact that all of those people who are in the ground, who have returned to Allah, we don't know their status. The closest we're going to get to their status is just like me stumbling and bumbling at this cemetery trying to find their headstones. That's it. We don't have provocation to dig up anything, because it's not about that. It is a symbolic understanding that we have connection to these people, and by showing up, we give them the last bit of gratitude that we can do. The last bit of gratitude that we can do. I talked to my Aunt Dottie yesterday, and I told her, I said, man, Aunt Dot, I said, I've been going to Harmony for so many years, but I got out of practice. I got out of practice of going to Harmony. I have no excuse. And I got reminded when I was there, I said, boy, Allah has a sense of humor. Because for all these years I've been going, when I got there this time, with all the new divisions and all of that, I was lost. Literally, you have to make the dua to find your loved ones. And when I found them, I said, this isn't good. This isn't good. I would hate for someone to be looking for me and not be able to find me. To have the anxiety and embarrassment that I had. And this is with people that you love. This is people, like, again, they've given you life. In lineage, they've given you life. My grandparents gave my father life, and my father and my mother gave me life. And here we are. I felt like a vagabond. But here's the merciful part of it. When I got there, I thought the thing that was a blessing was that I could sit there and wish them well. I felt I could get there and wish them well. I prayed that they're doing well. I prayed that their souls are lifted. I pray that their souls are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I pray more and more that Allah forgives their bad deeds and accepts their good deeds to elevate them. Of course, the graveside is the closest you're going to get, but it felt empowering. And I think the thing that was important for me was I literally began to appreciate their life, their lived lives a lot more than I had done before. Because when you get older, they say things like, I got more future behind me, I got more past behind me than future in front of me, and things like that. And it's like you're getting older. Like for me, my brother came and picked me up from the airport. My brother Rick came and picked me up from the airport. He's a soldier, but he was moving funny. I'm like, "What's up?" He had gotten gout in his elbow, and I'm like, "Man, what the heck are you doing with gout?" Because I forgot for a minute that we in our 50s. We're not in our 40s or our 30s. We're in our 50s. We've lived a lot of life. And just the same as everyone else on this, you wake up and you got a gray hair in your eyebrow, and it doesn't occur to you that the life that you're living is going. You're marching, you're on the same trajectory as a lot of other people. And I think sometimes if we can stop and appreciate that, I personally feel that it makes the travel a little bit more. So when you do visit the graves, you appreciate them a little bit more because they felt the same way, and maybe in the midst of they feeling the same way, and sand going through the hourglass, they stopped to ask you how you were doing. They stopped to take you to the store. They stopped to give you a hug. They stopped to give you some advice. They sat and laughed with you with your little stupid jokes, my little stupid jokes. They came to see my little comedy shows. And life is precious, but they spent that little bit of life. I look at current events. I look at current events, and I'm appalled like everybody else. But I'm appalled for maybe a different reason. I'm appalled because they don't understand the sanctity of visiting the graves. That the destruction that we see, whether it be war or drugs or poor policies or just blatant disregard for life, that people don't understand the sanctity of visiting the graves. And half the time, they won't visit the graves. War does not allow for you to visit the graves. You have fits of crime, and people who do these crimes, they don't visit the graves of the people that they injure or they kill. I had a friend of mine years ago, I murdered somebody. He did all of about 32 years, got out of prison, and he was Muslim. And what he had done was he stayed in contact with the family. And the thing that he asked the family to do once he finally got out, he asked them to give them the directions or the destination of the gravesite of the person he had murdered. And it seemed weird. I was like, hey man, you just got out, da da da, kind of freaking people out. He's like, no. He said, I need to ask for forgiveness. And I remember him going to the gravesite. Even with JT, my main man JT, his father and we were good friends. JT's father and I knew JT's dad before I met JT. I met his father when I was 17 years old. He worked at the YMCA in downtown Milwaukee on Wisconsin Avenue. And that man saw me from 17 to growing into a man, the whole nine. Now, here's the story. And JT and I was sitting around having lunch, and I looked at him and I said, hey, man, I need a favor. He goes, what's up? I said, man, I need to visit. I got to visit Mr. Thomas. I got to visit your dad. He said, what? I said, man, I got to visit. I said, that was my man. I said, he looked out for me as a young knucklehead coming from Washington, D.C. He looked out for me. He gave me valuable advice. And even as an adult, when we got to know each other outside of the Marquette situation, and I found out that JT was his son, it was interesting because we had a camaraderie. And I remember going praying for the soul of Mr. Thomas. And today I thought about so many people, so many people. who have touched my life, who invested in me. And it's like, I have a lot of graves to go visit. There's Reggie in Philadelphia. There's my Aunt Shirley, my Aunt Earl, and my Uncle June in Danville, Virginia. My cousin Nook. I got to visit. I couldn't find his gravesite. I didn't know that he was buried at Harmony. But there was so many people that you just want to say thank you to. So listen, I'm not gonna go on today too long, but I just want to share that with you. That there's something to honoring our dearly departed. That the value proposition is not something that necessarily, it may be something that does something for you for your heart, but when you put it out in the space, think and think and think of all the people who left this earth in your lifetime, just in your lifetime. Now think 100 years before you, think 1,000 years before you, think of cave people, Neanderthals, who left this world. And you begin to understand that it is indeed, in some regards, a divine plan. That a lot of them call people home without a reason, without a purpose. That he calls them home in an orderly fashion, his order. And it leaves us in many regards, if we're blessed to have those relationships, quality, ethical relationships with our parents and our friends and our associates and our wives, our husbands and our children, that the thing that happens when they come to visit is that sadness, the initial sadness, becomes respect, appreciation, and adoration. Think about that. All right, listen. It's a short show today. You guys been great. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much. And please, 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 if you get a chance, your loved ones, friends, coworkers, whoever it is that touch your life, do them a favor. Visit. Visit the graves. I'm Preacher Moss on the SOS. See you guys next week. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And special shout out to Stevie Wonder for that dropping a jewel of knowledge. And it may be later, but I also want to give a shout out to our veterans. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.